reconciling binding and function. And before we get into each question, let me preface this with some general comments. Uh, First thing is, chemists like binding a lot. They're steric. They like holes that things fit in and so forth, understandably. Um, and there's this notion that binding is more simple than function, which I'd like to dispel. If you're going to do binding and account for all the species that are going to be created, it can be horrendously complex as well. So if you're going to choose binding with the idea that, oh, it's going to be easier to interpret and so forth, I would suggest you think again about that. The other thing is we're now in an allosteric world with the notions that are coming out. Binding is not a passive process. Don't think just because a protein is so big, a ligand is so small, that the protein can bind it and it won't change. It'll change. Its energy is going to change necessarily. Don't think that you can just consider it as a receptacle of compounds. So, seeing as binding is interactive, allosteric, you're going to have the changes in the protein that are translated by the cell into function. Now, the nice thing about function, and I think you'll catch on from my comments, I much prefer function. And why is that? Because that's where the real world is. That's what the cell sees. That's what the person on your drug will experience. Binding can be there, very useful as an adjunct to perhaps understanding why the things you're seeing. But the default should always be function. And therefore, I state that because that means for allosteric compound, binding will often miss things. So it's great to do it, compare it to function, try to use it to give you texture on what you think's happening, but don't use it as a, well, it should have agreed with this and it didn't, what's wrong? Because there are many cases where binding and function do not and should not agree. Just think of them as different views of the same thing. So that's my prosing on the two systems. Let's get to Kylie's questions now, which I have to confess were interesting, new to me. So we're talking about reconciling binding and function. The question is, what are some good ways to quantify and model the oscillating? Oh, first one first, sorry. Thoughts on applying information theory to understanding discrepancies between binding and functional outputs. And Kylie gave me an article. I confess I did not see it, so I have not read it. I printed it out, and I will. So I'll have some initial thoughts on this, Kylie, and then we might perhaps take it offline after I've read this paper and go into it in details. The only experiences I've ever had with information theory are networks, and so they have been primarily involved with cell systems and function, feedback loops, and so forth. And there are some interesting articles on this where the theory is applied to systems and system screening. And all a system is, as far as I understand it, is a collection of nodes. So you have all these interconnections and there's nodes. And if you're looking for a way, and in our case, a molecule, to control this system or change it, you will have choices of what node do I go after, and there's generally two kinds of nodes, uh, so-called superfluous nodes, extraneous ones. What do I mean there? If you knock them out, the system won't care. It will still function. And a well-known node, we were doing work in GSK cancer. A certain tumor will overexpress a kinase, so you argue, well, that kinase must be really important for the tumor. So if I knock out that kinase, I'll knock out the tumor. So you make a compound that does that, and the tumor laughs at you because it has ways around that node. It was not a. The other nodes are the ones you want, fragile nodes. So if you think of a system like a house of cards, that's the card you pull out and the whole house comes crashing down. Those are the ones that you want to get. You knock out that node in a tumor, you'll kill it. So it's a question of the theories and ideas that these um, around these systems to choose the right node. And the same goes for system screening. Beyond that, I have no specific examples. I would aim you towards certain authors, though. Fabian Vincent is probably the world's expert on systems, and he'd be a good one. So, how to apply that to differences between function and binding? I think it's going to have to be a specific case by case there. I don't know of any general way, but let me read the article and see what the authors are proposing as methods, and then maybe we could talk again. So that's my hand waving answer to your question right now, Kylie.